Welcome to Inside San Diego, where we take a personal look at the hottest trends under the sun. On today's show, we'll have the most San Diego has to offer in love, life, fashion, fitness, food, and all-around entertainment. Live from the studios at KUSI News, Inside San Diego.
Also this morning, money problems, the #1 reason for marital stress. This morning, our relationship expert has some tips on how not to let money ruin your marriage. We're going to be talking to her in just a short bit. When couples get married, they're supposed to be together until death do us part, as the vows go. But for many, it turns out to be until debt do us part. Relationship expert Lily Cotilla is back with tips on how not to let money ruin your relationship. Welcome.
Thanks.
I was surprised to read that money problems cause more marriages to split up than infidelity does.
Yeah, you'd think that affairs would contribute to more divorce, but there's so much stress around financial burden and debt adding up that it really creates a lot of problems in relationships.
Well, let's talk about where to begin when it comes to making sure it doesn't ruin your relationship. But where do you start?
Well, what would you like to talk about first?
Well, you know, joint banking is something that you mentioned earlier to me.
Yes.
That keep your money together.
Joint banking, a lot of times when we date, you know, things are 50-50. We divide the bills. One person pays for dinner one time, the other person pays for dinner another time. And when we go into marriage these days, that pattern typically follows. And that's not a unification. So what really is a good idea is to create a joint bank account. And people are going to be making different salaries. So if you put an equal amount into the joint bank account, that's not exactly fair. So you come up with a percentage, let's say 80%. So someone's making $50,000, someone's making $10,000, you put in 80% into the joint account. And those will cover things like rent, expenses, groceries, and then you still have some money left over in an individual account for personal uses. Now, it's really important not to overspend your individual account because it's a commitment to the relationship to have enough money in that joint account and make that promise, make that deposit like you said you would.
You also talk about something called the half-hour rule. What is that?
Yeah, well, creating a financial security for the future. A lot of times over the years, we look at credit cards as invisible money and debt adds up. So if you divide your work week, let's say it's 40 hours, figure out your hourly salary, and then you take half an hour of work and you put it toward debt, half an hour toward retirement, and half an hour toward savings. That's a pretty good strategic plan for securing a financially stable future.
Because you're paying yourself in 3 different ways.
Exactly.
That can help
and
you
you
out
have to
later.
be on board as a couple to do that.
Also, parental division is something that you talk about. What does that mean?
Yeah, parental division, to decide if one person is going to stay home and one person is going to work. Now, a lot of times resentment can build up because one person's working really hard at work to bring home the money, the other person's at home with the kids. So to really agree on appreciating each other for what you do and to agree on what this spending, resentments come from allowances. People don't like to have allowances. And then the other person gets resentful over if the partner overspends. So to come to an agreement and to really have trust in the relationship that we're in this together and we're going to respect each other's values on money.
So if you're going to do it this way, somebody's home, somebody's working, you're going to have to talk about this beforehand so the resentment doesn't build up.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, some other things you talk about, people viewing money differently. You've got 2 people joining together in marriage, coming from different backgrounds many times, different families. They have different ideas when it comes to a greenback.
Yeah. We're brought up differently. We have different expectations around money. There are different ways to spend money, different views, and so we're not going to marry our clone. You know, we have to realize what is important to each other, what we've been raised with, and then come to negotiations. You know, if one day one partner comes home and sees a $30,000 car in the garage, there's going to be a problem. We've got to agree on those big expenses that we're going to share together.
So you have to establish a budget. You have to communicate about these things. Also, big picture talking. You say that's very important.
Yeah, big picture talking. A lot of times people will go into marriage and not realize how much debt someone has. A year later, they find out, oh my gosh, there's $200,000 debt that I'm now too responsible for. So to discuss that prior to going in and how you're going to make those arrangements is really important. Also, what assets you have before going into it. talk about a financial security regarding the future. What is important? Is it important to set up a plan to get that house? Is it important to set up a plan to get that car? To be on board with the same things as to avoid power struggles in the future.
You know, when people get married, there's so much pomp and circumstance around the actual ceremony and the celebration of it all. A lot of times these things are kind of difficult to talk about.
Yeah, and you know what I just read? People are cashing out their 401ks to have enough money to celebrate the wedding. Well, as we all know, if you do that before 59 and a half, I mean, that could be some dangerous territory.
You're penalized, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, you know, do what you can for the wedding with the expenses that you have, but you don't want to go into a marriage with this accumulated debt from the beginning, especially knowing the statistics that causes the #1 divorce.
Yeah. Once you are married, though, do people's patterns tend to stay the same, or do they change as the years go on when it comes to spending?
You know, behavior is a really hard thing to change. Patterns typically stay the same, but if we really love our partners and really want to work together, we're going to give up some of those core beliefs that we were raised with in order to come to that place of agreement and respect and appreciation. It takes work, though.
It takes work, and it's not always easy. Lily Kotilla, thanks so much for stopping by. Good to see you as always.
Thank you.
For more of Lily's tips, you can go to KUSI.com.